I call Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koutou te whare. He mihi nui ki te tangata whenua o Waikato, Ngati Kahukura Koroki, me Ngati Haua. It's very humbling to speak here today. I am a neighbour from Hauraki. I want to acknowledge Ngati Haua in particular because I believe it is time for Pākehā to learn to be good neighbours and to acknowledge our neighbours in the truest sense through Te Treaty o Waitangi. So we are honoured to speak on this bill today. I'd also like to acknowledge the Minister and the negotiators for what has obviously been a remarkable negotiation with great efficiency, and that is something that Ngati Haua and the government can be proud of. The Ngati Haua settlement is an important issue for this Waikato iwi who experienced a massive raupatu. The proud descendants of Wiremu Tamihana Tarapipipi and others have done their very best to gain a better future for their mokopuna. And again, the settlement has some positive cultural and commercial elements, but we have to stop and weep for what these people have lost since their tupuna experienced the full weight of a colonial juggernaut intent on the fertile lands of their rohi. Also their maunga, from Te Aroha to Maunga Kawa. Te Aroha, where Ngati Haua as well as Ngati Rahiri Tumutumu and Ngati Hako have fought long and hard for the clean-up of a 20th century destruction by the Tui mine toxic site, which has finally occurred, and I am one of those working to see this never happens again on that sacred mountain. Through to the dairy lands and to the very interesting issues in the Ngati Haua settlement bill, such as the aerodrome issue, which just shows the huge need for redress and the undeniable call for justice, not just because of the 1860s, but because of the 1950s and beyond. But I would like to return to the long shadow of a particular incident, the burning of unarmed women and children at Rangi Alfia, which has caused anger and anguish for so many, including for Wiremu Tamihana, the Kingitanga, and his people who lost faith in the Crown and the messages of the supposed Christians whose missionaries preached a wonderful message of peace, but whose soldiers killed the innocent in a place of sanctuary. It doesn't get much worse than that. And it is my belief, Mr Speaker, that on the walls of this House we recognise many wars, but we will have finally matured as a nation when we recognise the wars that took place in our own country and the people who died on both sides of those conflicts with honour and respect to our own history as well as our global responsibilities. If we look at the specific issues covered in the bill and the recess, they're not related. The redress, they're not related to the raupatu issues covered in the other Waikato settlement bills, which include Ngati Haua, and where Ngati Haua's losses have been acknowledged. They address non-raupatu claims, and there's some very creative and good ideas in here. The cultural regress is covered by a cultural protocol, which binds other legal instruments such as the RMA and the Historic Places Act, and requires the serious consideration of the Environment Court, and I hope these things come to fruition. There are 8 sites that are also being vested in various ways, including a number of reserves, notably Maunga Kawa, which is such an important maunga, and also the Pukimako A and Pukimako B historic reserves are revoked and vested in joint trustees. And so you see the coming together of the communities to govern these through management plans. Obviously, there are many significant issues, including the issues around the Māori Parliament Te Kahanganui and the recognition of the tupuna, the extraordinary tupuna Wiremu Tamihana. But the story I wanted to focus on a little was the Waharoa aerodrome, which is a classic story of an aerodrome taken in the 1940s during the war, and then the complete failure to return it after the war, and instead the Public Works Act being used again as a legal instrument of oppression to legitimise the confiscation. And this is now to be managed by a permanent committee of trustees with very specific powers and with limits on their powers. And I hope that this committee will result in a genuine and lasting benefit to the hapu of Raunga Iti Marae, because I'm very aware of the losses that continue to this day for those communities. Again, I'd say that the bill was negotiated very efficiently and look forward to its future progress. The Crown has apologised for breaches of treaty rights from the 1860s to the 1950s and acknowledged the direct and the devious means employed to strip these hapu of their fertile lands, sacred rivers and maunga. And as we heard from our previous speaker, thriving communities with strong economic base were totally destroyed and have not recovered. But the history and the reality of their tupuna, the gift that has been given, is still alive beneath the overlay of dairy farms. Ngati Haua have played an extraordinary role in the kingitanga through their tupuna and themselves, and they have negotiated positive redress. But much of this is still unfixable in the forced letting go of the land itself, land that is in private hands, of people who honestly don't ever demonstrate, in my experience, little knowledge of the incredible sad transformation from Ngati Haua and their rangatiratanga via various means, and now alienated beyond reach. But we are proud to support this bill.
Ko Louise Upston.
Tēnā koe te mana whakawā, tēnā koe te whare. Rauringa tira mā, tēnei te